Welcome to Kansas Ag Report. I'm Ken Rogers. On this week's program, it's our monthly conversation with Dr. Roger McEowen from the Washburn School of Law. We'll also have features from Kansas Corn, Kansas Wheat, and the Kansas Farm Bureau, and the weekly update from Kansas Livestock Association and market information from Pinion.
Kansas Ag Report brought to you in part by the Kansas Soybean Commission, the Soybean Checkoff, progress powered by Kansas farmers. Kansas Farm Bureau, a grassroots ag organization representing the state's farm and ranch families since 1919, kfb.org. And the Kansas Wheat Commission, lending in the adoption of profitable innovations from wheat, online at kswheat.com.
In agriculture news, McDonald's filing a lawsuit against Tyson, JBS, and other major meatpacking companies. The fast food chain accusing the Packers of colluding for years to limit beef supplies. The suit says the collusion allowed the companies to boost their profits while forcing McDonald's to pay inflated prices for their meat supplies. McDonald's says the companies conspired to reduce production levels beginning in January 1 of 2024, which would artificially drive up market prices. The companies have significant control over the cattle and beef industry, so they can manipulate prices at their will, they said. In the suit, McDonald's says only colluding meat packers would expect to benefit by reducing their prices and purchases of slaughtered cattle, fully aware that their conspiracy would shield them from the pressure of a competitive market. Back in 2018, the big four beef companies controlled 80% of fresh and frozen beef sold in the U.S. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints real estate arm paying some $289 million to acquire tens of thousands of acres of farmland around 8 states. Farmland Reserve, which is the nonprofit arm of the Mormon Church, buying 46 farms from real estate investor Farmland Partners. The farms encompass 41,500 acres of land, including places in Arkansas, Florida, Louisiana, Nebraska, Oklahoma, and the Carolinas. Doug Rose, the CEO of Farmland Reserve, he said the company plans to lease the productive farms back to local farmers. The LDS Church owns about 1.7 million acres of land, primarily used for agriculture, according to Landgate. That's a commercial real estate advisory service. It makes it one of the largest institutional landholders in the U.S. It is estimated the church owns $16 billion worth of property around the country, with about $2 billion for agriculture land. And a federal judge rejected a petition from environmental activists for more strict regulations of large livestock operations in a win for the U.S. meat industry. The U.S. Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit, based out in San Francisco, threw out a lawsuit that would have changed how Environmental Protection Agency regulates concentrated animal feeding operations. Pork producers and others applauding the decision. The lawsuit, filed and led by Food and Water Watch, challenged the EPA's decision last year to deny a petition that would have required all farms to obtain permits to operate their CAFOs unless they could prove they're not a source of pollution. But in the petition, activist groups argued livestock operations are releasing pollutions into the waterways in violation of the Clean Water Act. But in that decision, the court agreed with the EPA's approach of regulating livestock production, including the formation of a subcommittee to study water quality issues, saying it was important to seek information about how to best tackle the problem before crafting any new regulations. That's Ag News. We'll be back with Dr. Roger McEowen in a moment here on the Kansas Ag Report. Stay with us.
The Kansas Ag Report brought to you in part by Kansas Grain Sorghum, growers working together. Learn more at ksgrainsorghum.org. Grass and Grain, online or in the mail, keeping Kansas farmers informed for over 60 years. grassandgrain.com.
Time once again to visit with Dr. Roger McEowen for the Washburn School of Law, Ag and Tax Law Specialist. Good morning, Dr. McEowen.
Good to be with you, Ken.
Lots of things to talk about. I think we could talk about water and wetlands every month because but there has
Yeah.
been a couple of new rulings that have been maybe beneficial to farmers.
Yeah, there really have. If you remember, it was late May, in fact, May 25 of 2023, that the Sackett opinion was delivered by the U.S. Supreme Court that kind of changes the way that we determine what a wetland is for purposes of the federal government's jurisdiction under the Clean Water Act. And out of that, basically, and I'm oversimplifying it, but the court, in essence, said that you have to have a continuous surface water connection. And you have to be able to know when the wetland ends and where the navigable water body begins. There has to be you have to be able to discern that. And so that takes out a lot of ditches that are ephemeral streams. And that's a big issue. And that's a huge issue for agriculture. But you're right, there have been a couple of federal court opinions now that at the district court level that have applied that Sackett test, both involving farming operations. One was in central Idaho, and there was a river, the Bruneau River, that ran, I probably pronounced that wrong, but ran through the ranch. And they had built some man-made crossings to get from one side of the river to the other, and they were also mining sand and gravel. The feds came in, the EPA came in and said, "No, you need a discharge permit under the Clean Water Act. That's navigable water because you've got adjacent wetlands." And they challenged it and said, not under the new standard. We don't think it is because there's no continuous surface flow in that water. There's sometimes water in those wet areas, but those are in the rainy season and in the springtime. And the court granted summary judgment for the ranch in that one. Said, no, that doesn't meet the new standard. But the court also gave the EPA 30 days to go back and amend their complaint to plead more facts that could lead to jurisdiction. So under the old standard, the pleading wasn't enough. Under the new standard, or under the old standard, the pleading would have been enough. Under the new standard, it's not. And the other case was down in Florida. Similar situation, South Florida, individual was developing some land to make a farming operation out of it. The government came in and said, you have wetlands. They challenged that under the new standard, and the court said, no, these ditches that are adjacent here are not connected with a sufficient connection under the Sackett standard. Summary judgment for the farmer in that one.
So maybe there's some good news. Maybe we probably have some judges in the spot that will look at it from maybe the agriculture or from a commerce standpoint. Quite something.
Yeah, I think so. And we're seeing that occur in these two cases right out of the box. So those are the first two big ones that have applied to farmers post-Sackett.
Dr. Roger McEowen for the Washburn School of Law is joining us, joins us every month to talk about different things of agriculture throughout the legal system. Take a break, back with more in just a moment.
Kansas Ag Report brought to you in part by the Kansas Livestock Association, supporting members' business interests and meeting consumer demands. KLA.org. Oldie Seed Farms, carrying soil-specific seed. Find them on the web at oldieseed.com. That's OHLDE seed.com. And Kansas Corn, building the future at kansascorn.com.
Our guest is Dr. Roger McEowen for the Washburn School of Law, as we have our monthly conversation with him. One of the topics, too, we want to talk about, and we knew it was coming. It's kind of here, but really the mechanism to make sure it happens is going to happen right away. That's dealing with the beneficial ownership. You know, we thought, well, is agriculture really a part of it? Or, there's some things that basically one of these things the government wants to know information. And so you better make sure that if you don't have the right things to fill it out, you get your team of professionals to help you. You can be in trouble.
Yeah, that's right. What we're talking about, of course, are the beneficial ownership information reporting rules, which came into play a few years ago under the Corporate Transparency Act, but only take effect really for most people starting this year, and then for everybody starting in 2025, right after 2024 ends. And if you have a business that you register with the state. So if you're a sole proprietor and you're not registered with the state, don't worry about what I'm going to say here. But if you're a sole proprietorship because you're an single member LLC and you default to sole proprietorship status, well, you had to register that LLC with the state. So now you're potentially subject to these information reporting rules. And if you don't file the necessary reports on a timely basis, it's a $500 per day fine for each day you're late, capped at $10,000. You don't want to hit that. And the reason for these reporting rules, and I'll get into that in just a second, is that they're trying to go after shell corporations, figure out who the people are that own these shell corporations, and track down the money and where it's coming from. So that's the purpose of all this. Now, a lot of small farming operations will be subject to this. There's a $5 million gross income test. If you're beneath that, you have to file. And it seems backwards. If you're above that, you don't have to file, but those businesses already have to report their ownership information under the SEC rules. So now they're coming after the smaller ones. So if you have at least a 25% ownership interest in the business, or you control it, and there are various tests for this, so own or control, then you are a reporting person. And if your entity is a reporting entity, you have to file these certain reports. And so you go to FinCEN, FINCEN.gov, and BOI reporting, and they have the forms there. You fill them out. It's all done online. You're going to get an identifier number, just like if you're a tax preparer, you get a PTIN number. That's taken care of that way. Now, questions have been raised as to whether all of this is constitutional. And a federal trial court this past spring said it wasn't. Now, the appeal was heard, the oral arguments were in late September in the 11th Circuit. We don't have the opinion yet, but we have two other courts that are considering the constitutionality of these requirements. One in Federal District Court in Michigan and another one in Federal District Court in Utah. So what I'm telling practitioners, Ken, is that for your clients that need to file these reports, if this stands as constitutional, get things ready. Some have already gone ahead and filed reports for clients, but farmers, they don't want to give the government any more information than they absolutely have to. So my advice has been gather the information, sit on it. Let's see what the courts say. If we get into mid-December, now you really got to think about filing this and get it done by the end of the year. Because if you were in business prior to this year, your deadline is January 1 of 2024. So you want to get it done by the end of this year. If you started a new business this year, you got 90 days to file those reports from the time you're registered with the state. And then if you start next year in your business, you got 30 days from the time you register with the state. So kind of a big deal. A lot of people view it as a hassle. Attorneys don't want to do it. The CPAs don't want to do it because they're fearing, particularly the non-lawyers, malpractice liability. And some states have ruled on that issue as to whether it is the unauthorized practice of law or not. So there's a whole bunch of issues that are tangled into this one.
Unbelievable. Well, Dr. McEowen, if folks want to learn more about these things we've talked about, and I'm sure you have a whole lot of other things that you're pursuing and following, how can they do that?
Yeah. I've written about these on my blog as well as on my Substack publication. And I also, the blog material goes over to K-State and is also put on the Ag Manager website through the Department of Ag Econ.
All right, very good. Dr. McEowen, as always, appreciate the time. We'll talk to you again next month.
Thank you, Ken.
Dr. Roger McEowen, who was an ag and tax law specialist at the Washburn School of Law, has joined us. We'll take a break, have more in just a moment.
Imagine turning soybean oil, used cooking oils, and waste animal fats into fuel so amazing it drives U.S. jobs and our economy forward. Learn more about biodiesel at americasadvancedbiofuel.com.
The Kansas Wheat Innovation Center in Manhattan is rediscovering ways to get improved varieties and new genetics in the hands of farmers faster. Grower-led and checkoff-funded research initiatives are bringing about positive change. This grassroots leadership provides a strong voice in Topeka and Washington, D.C. Now is the time to partner with Kansas Wheat in moving wheat forward. Kansas Wheat Commission and Kansas Association of Wheat Growers. Farmers investing in their future and yours. Log on to rediscoverwheat.org.
Hello everyone, my name is Chris Remick and I am part of Kansas Corn's Seed to STEM program here. And today we are actually going to talk about the parts of the corn plant, okay? And we're going to work our way from the bottom to the top. And notice how tall this plant is. I'm 5'8", and when we look at this plant is 2.5 meters tall. That's over 8 feet tall. These guys can get pretty big. So what we'll do is we'll start at the bottom and we'll just work our way to the top. So the first thing we're going to look at right here, these right here are the roots. Right above the roots are the brace roots. From the brace roots and the roots, we end up having the stalk. And from the stalk, we have our leaves. And where the leaves attach are the nodes. And then we go all the way up here to the tassel. We see this ear of corn right here. This is the ear of corn. And as you can see, we have the husk on the outside. The silks. You see that the husk has been pulled back, showing us the silks, and then showing us these nice little kernels right here. And those are the major parts of the plant.
Think you have to own a tractor to be a Farm Bureau member? Think again! Kansas Farm Bureau is more than just a resource for farmers and ranchers. Its mission is to improve agriculture and quality of life for all Kansans. By supporting Farm Bureau, you're supporting the folks who grow and raise your food. Not only does your Farm Bureau membership create leadership opportunities, educational programs, and community events that promote Kansas agriculture across the state, it comes with great benefits for you and your family. For just about $50 per year, you'll get discounts on things like hotels and entertainment, home and office supplies, cell phone plans, and much more. You'll also gain access to Kansas Farm Bureau health plans, affordable health care, nationwide coverage, and friendly service. Join us today. Visit ksfarmbureau.org/join to learn more.
Kansas Corn reminds you that E15 fuel is the right choice for every kind of driver. For the car enthusiast, E15 has higher octane. For the thrifty driver, E15 is priced lower than regular unleaded. For the nature lover, E15 provides cleaner air. For the shopper who buys local, E15 has more ethanol from our Kansas corn farms. Choose E15 for a higher octane, lower price, cleaner American fuel. Message from the Kansas Corn Commission. Learn more at kscorn.com.
Mental health is really important to me. Not only have I struggled myself, but I've watched other farmers struggle. I saw my grandfather struggle from time to time, and we're out here for hours on end by ourselves, and it just lets our mind race, about what if, what about that, the sacrifices that we're making. My kids aren't seeing me, my wife's not seeing me, what am I missing out at home? And there's a lot of things that we can't control that we think we can control. I credit my wife a lot for me going and seeking help. I respect all the women in her shoes that do what she does on a daily basis. I think I've become a stronger person by talking about it, and I hope that my story helps other farmers talk about their struggles and feel like it's okay to talk about it, because it's one of those things that if we don't talk about it, nobody knows that we're struggling. And the struggle is real.
The Kansas Beef Council is working with Kansas high school coaches to implement the checkoff-funded sports nutrition game plan in their athletic programs. This initiative was developed to educate high school athletes, coaches, trainers, and parents on sports nutrition principles. It utilizes videos, handouts, social graphics, and team challenges to share the science-based information, which highlights how lean beef perfectly fits into an athlete's diet due to the high-quality nutrients it provides. Weekly emails with a tip of the week are being sent to 65 different teams and parent groups across the state. These teams include every sport from football to swimming. Due to recent dietary intake data highlighting deficiencies among school-age children in essential nutrients such as protein, iron, zinc, and vitamins B6 and B12, this program is incredibly timely. The Sports Nutrition Initiative received a warm reception from the 540 attendees at the 90th Kansas High School Activities Association Coaching School Conference. KBC Director of Nutrition, Abby Hadari, a registered dietitian, discussed the program's benefits during a presentation on integrating sports nutrition into high school team culture. By promoting the nutritional benefits of beef, which provides much of what adolescents are not getting enough of each day, KBC aims to instill healthy eating habits in young athletes and their families.
Many seed companies claim to offer the latest genetics, but how many have tested those genetics in soils just like yours? The Oldie Seed Know to Grow research program has fully tested the latest seed genetics in soils that are right in your neighborhood. The Oldie Seed Know to Grow program can recommend the best performing hybrids from technologies like Enlist, Extend, and Liberty Link that will optimize the yield and profit of every acre on your farm. Contact Oldie Seed today.
Personal experience with stress in agriculture is my father took his life. It was a stressful life that he had, and he poured everything that he had into the farm, into our family, and it caught up to him. And I think he was in a place where he felt alone, and he felt that he wasn't providing for us the way that we deserved, and we saw it differently. I'm Nick Hazenkamp. I am the second oldest of 7 kids, grew up on a farm in South Nemaha County. So my father was actually born on the farm. He was literally born and raised and spent his entire life on this farm. We didn't really know that there was a problem. We became aware of the issue. My brother found the things would indicate that things were pretty serious. We really sought the help and the support and try to find the resources to help improve his mental condition. I like to say the reason it happened was because we didn't think it was going to happen. When my dad had passed, when he took his life, in a very short period of time, we had to determine, and really my mom had to determine, how we keep this legacy moving forward. Ben was 19, Josh was 11, and Mom was now a widow of 7 kids. Me and my older brother, we were off in our jobs. That wasn't the path that we were going down, was to take over the farm. So my younger brothers, for now close to 12 years, have been carrying the torch and have been leading this farm and managing this farm to what it is today. I see depression, I see specifically suicide very, very differently now that it's impacted us. And I think there's the stigma of, pick yourself up by the bootstraps and let's move forward. And this is a population and a culture that they pride themselves on the hard work that they do. And when we have a problem that we can't outwork, we just kind of forget about it. What happens is we continue to bury our emotions, we continue to bury our problems, and they don't get addressed. I would say if you're struggling with mental health, or if you're struggling with suicidal thoughts specifically, my advice is to receive the help. Be willing to reach out and let somebody know you're struggling with something, because there's a lot of people out there, there's a lot of resources out there that are willing to come together, receive that gift. One of the biggest challenges is people think that they have to be alone in this, that they are alone, and that's not true. That's the furthest from the truth. If you're under the impression that you have a family member or a friend that's struggling with that as well, we have to be able to offer help. We have to be able to bring that to the front and have honest conversations with them. Our identity and our worth is not tied up in money or assets or the result of a crop. That's not our identity. The value of their life is what matters.
Good morning. This is Jacob Herzog with Pinion Risk Management. Now harvest is fully underway, and I hear great yield numbers in general, which was anticipated, and it becomes harder and harder to bet against the national corn yield north of 183. Now beans have some small rough spots, but in general are yielding good as well. The most recent bullish story is China considering injecting stimulus into their top banks. Now this is on top of the previous China central bank interest rate cuts. Now, in theory, this should stimulate their economy and increase demand for agricultural products. This has prompted an increased short covering of positions in a general mood of just get out of the way, just in case. Bulls have also been talking up the dryness in Brazil, which their forecast for the next 2 weeks is well below normal, but rains are expected to come back into the forecast a little by mid-October and be somewhat normal by the end of October. Now, bear in mind that roughly 70% of Brazilian beans are planted between October 10 and November 25th. Low rainfall has also affected the river levels, halting some transportation between some areas of Mato Grosso to their key ports, although it is suspected that most of the grain from those areas has already been moved out. On the wheat front, Sovcon has said that winter wheat sowing rates in Russia have fallen to an 11-year low due to drought in key producing regions, clouding the outlook in general for the 2025 grain harvest. Now, there's a lot of moving parts in the market, and it's all fine and dandy to watch the market go up and down, but plan accordingly and be proactive so that just in case things do turn to the downside, because we aren't quite out of the woods yet. If you would like to talk to somebody about a plan, you can reach us at 888-452-8751. I'm Jacob Herzog with Pinion Risk Management.
That'll do it for our program this week. Thank you so much for joining us. Be social with us online, KansasAgReport.net, or our social media channels. I'm Ken Rogers. We'll see you next week on the Kansas Ag Report.
Next time you see a beautiful field of corn, reach out and thank the farmers who work tirelessly to raise corn for livestock feed, renewable fuels, and exports to feed a growing world population. The farmers on the Kansas Corn Commission work for Kansas Corn, with grower-funded checkoff dollars that support foreign and domestic market development, research, promotion, and education to expand opportunities for Kansas farmers. To learn more, visit kscorn.com.